Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, it's the tofu war. How President Trump's tariffs revealed a remarkable example of foresight and planning. I'm David Ravel. Well, it was late in 2024 that most soy farmers settled on their plans for this year. And what a year 2024 had been. It was one of the most highly profitable years for soybeans ever. And for the many farmers who switched to the beans a decade before, it must have felt prescient. The demand for soy in the States has continued to gradually strengthen as many Americans sought out healthy, vegetarian alternatives to red meat. But the big kahuna in the farmers' plan was the demand from China. Year by year, China's appetite for American soy continued to grow, reaching an astonishing $12.5 billion in 2024. This, even though American soy is genetically modified, GMO, and considered fit only for livestock feed. While the farmers were busy harvesting their very profitable soy crop, the rest of the nation was caught up in the closing days of a presidential campaign, with Democratic candidate Kamala Harris pitted against Republican Donald Trump. And it would come as no surprise to anyone who traveled to farm country that the former businessman turned politician carried the heartland and resumed his position behind the Resolute desk. For the soy farmers, this was a fitting topping to what had been an outstanding 2024. By the end of last year, planting schedules for this year were finalized, seed and fertilizer purchased, and long-term weather reports scanned. Farmers prepared a preliminary schedule for putting the crop in the ground. Almost all decided to continue what, for them, had been a winning hand: more soy to plant. When President Trump announced the new American tariffs on April 2nd, planting of this year's crop was already begun. Just like it had been every other year, the farmer's die was cast. No matter what lay ahead, foul weather, drought, storms, or even tariffs, the soy crop would grow to harvest, no turning back. Now, in the days that followed, it became increasingly apparent that President Trump's chief aim was to cut ties with China. In that distinctive clip way of speaking, he was out to break the trade with China. And that came as a complete shock to the Farm Belt. Soy farmers in particular felt that they would be spared from this high-stake tariff war, just as they had been in 2018. During Trump's first term, he also engaged in a tariff war with China. However, at that time, the president excluded soy from the tariff schedule. However, in what would be a foreshadowing of today, it was China that applied tariffs on American soy, Beijing placing a 25% retaliatory tariff on all U.S. soy entering China. And the result was that the American soybean sales to China dropped by 2/3. And in the end, the U.S. Congress had to bail out the farmers to the tune of about $12 billion. But China didn't stop there. Trump had awakened a sleeping giant, our most significant soybean customer. It was then, 7 years ago in 2018, that China began to explore its alternatives. Clearly, Brazil was the world's largest soybean producer and would be a viable alternative, but if and only if China and Brazil could come to terms and overcome the tremendous logistic hurdles. Brazil, after all, is located in the South Atlantic, while China is on the far side of the Pacific. Fortunately for China, it had secured rights and agreements to use the Panama Canal from the Panamanian authorities over 25 years ago. This made the current shipment of Brazil soy to China feasible. However, China isn't stopping there. Under its global Belt and Road program, it has recently agreed to build a massive rail system from Brazil in the east to Peru in the west. It will further expedite Brazil's shipping to China. Long-term planning at its best. Regrettably, all of this Chinese long-term positioning was invisible to the Trump administration and to the American farmers who followed them. During those heady post-inauguration days, farmers believed that the halcyon day of 2024 would return for at least one more year. But that was not to be. China has apparently agreed to purchase Brazil's soy, not ours. So when President Trump slapped a 34% tariff on American soy exports to China, it was greeted as a non-event by Beijing. While American farmers twist in the wind with acres and acres of unsold soy, China is totally silent. And it's this that has driven the Americans up the wall. No word, not a single social media tweet or a snide jab by President Xi Jinping, just an inscrutable silence. And that's how we know that we've lost the tofu war. Our best soy customer just selected another vendor, something that every shop owner and retail establishment has felt at some point or another. It's a lesson that most of us learned early. When you think you're indispensable, you're not. For the customer, there are always alternatives. And that's today's Value Side. For all of our articles, references, and podcasts, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. ValueSide is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.